Welcome back to the FloTrack Podcast. FloTrack Podcast at gmail.com is our email address. If you'd like to write in, you can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and on our website, flotrack.org/FloTrack Podcast. I'm Kevin. He's Lincoln. And Lincoln, you were wondering last time, hey, does anybody listen on different platforms? And we got an email from Logan with a screenshot of us on Spotify.
Okay, so we got an answer. What about
Yeah.
Stitcher? I want someone out there a screenshot of them on Stitcher. Like, shout out to Stitcher for seemingly always being like the third or fourth option that people name. Like, no one's like, you can listen to us on Stitcher, Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just seems like Stitcher's like deep in the list. So I would like an email of someone giving us a shout out on Stitcher next, if that can happen.
That ask and ye shall receive. We might get another screenshot to our inbox. Logan also adds, y'all are cool, but you can't do too many interviews in my judgment. And he passed along some recommendations: sprinters, legends, more college athletes, and our recent signees. If you want recent signees, I think the Mile Split podcast has been doing a really good job with that. I don't know if they're on Spotify. Perhaps they are. You can search them. But yeah, if people have recommendations for guests, if they want to hear more guests, the inbox is open. We'll read them. And it doesn't take much to convince Lincoln to book a guest.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like guests. I guess I misread the email when he said, y'all can't do too many interviews. I thought that was him saying, you're not very good at interviews. But I guess if you use the context clues after that, he introduces, he's saying it's impossible. We could have 3 guests an episode every day and it would not be too much for Logan. That's what he's saying. Okay, I understand.
Logan is basically saying, if you have 2 options, option 1 is guest, option 2 is talk about a Twitter troll for 45 minutes who's adding Grant Holloway. He's saying go with option 1.
Yeah. Well, see, I would differ with him on that because not only was I able to rile Gordon up, but I was able to rile him up enough to where he was himself getting in a back and forth with the Twitter troll yesterday. I don't know if you noticed that, but Gordon went in on our friend John, who's got 25 followers and who's been trolling the track community and created quite an uproar. That's track community can be set off by anyone at any time, even someone with 25 followers. And I think we've seen that the last couple days. We're all up in arms over this. And Gordon fell into the trap. The guy got him. I think he's purposely trolling people to get a rise out of folks. And Gordon fell for it. Fell for it hard.
Yeah. But by the end, I think Gordon started to understand the game and started to appreciate what John was doing there, because that was just trolling to the nth degree. It is interesting how we consume feedback via social media. I mean, this is equivalent to someone sitting in the stands randomly off to the side and yelling, "You're not very fast." Would everybody in the stands at the track meet get offended by the person yelling that? Or would they just say, hey, let's ignore that one crazy person sitting in the corner of the stands eating popcorn and let's go about our day? But because it's written down on the internet, carries so much more weight.
It does. It feels like it's a statement of fact, like it's someone's true beliefs, when they could just in fact be a heckler, just trying to cause chaos. I can't think of any other example in modern society where someone would dispute facts just to cause chaos. I've never seen something like that before.
But this person could be 12 years old.
Yeah. Well, I think showing witty, at least enough wittiness to be about 14, maybe 13. And the time frame the person is posting suggests, all day, suggests that this could be either a homeschooled person, someone who's unemployed, or someone who has a laid back job like we do, where they are able to respond at all hours of the day, and maybe in between video game sessions or, I don't know, trips to their own popcorn machine in their basement. I don't know. Yeah. But in any case, I think if you're taking it too seriously, you are a little sensitive and insecure, because it's fun to argue about if football players could beat track. I mean, I don't think so, but it's still fun to argue because we never really will know. When I don't think Tyreek Hill's lining up for the Olympics, the Olympic trials anytime soon, because he's currently operating in a $50 million contract, of which he has no incentive to go to the track. So that should be the flex. It's not who's faster; it's who picked the right sport, because the football players are getting paid much more. But I thought it was clearly facetious whenever he was highlighting the quarterback of the Giants, Daniel Jones, as being faster than Grant Holloway. I think that was a clear indication of it being a joke. But some people didn't take it that way.
Yeah. All right. On today's show, we're going to talk about the Ivy League canceling winter sports, the AIU appealing the Salwa Eid Naser decision, and Paul Chelimo running in a cross-country race in Terre Haute, Indiana. Let's start off here first with the Ivy League decision here. What were your thoughts?
Well, the Ivy League is now 3 for 3, I think, when being first at canceling seasons. They like to be ahead of the NCAA. They did it first back in the late winter of 2019, or excuse me, of 2020. I forget what year it is. And then they do it again before the fall, and before I think the NCAA declares that there's not going to be fall sports other than football, which is kind of separate, obviously. And then now they're doing it here in the winter. All indications are that we're going to have a like basketball seems to be proceeding as scheduled, at least in the Division I. I don't know the other divisions. And at least in the track community, we're sort of kind of operating like there's going to be an indoor season, although we're kind of acting like the details for, having a meet with people indoors during this nasty wave of the pandemic, is those details are just going to take care of themselves. So I don't really know. The point is, though, the Ivy League trying to get ahead of it once again, third time in 3 tries, to indicate, hey, we should probably take this pandemic seriously. We'll see. I think, not to get into political things, I think a change in administration will change the way the country views holding college sports during this time. And it seems like the Ivy League getting ahead of it. And we should be prepared, I think, for maybe a stoppage in play that we haven't seen since kind of the beginning in March and April.
Yeah, it is feeling like that time frame where you look down the horizon and you think, okay, well, we're playing right now, but what's going to be the thing that pushes it over? And is there going to be another avalanche of cancellations? Because right now it's been, we're proceeding almost as normal. Now there's been, at last count, 4 SEC football games this weekend that have been called off because of this. And they built a little bit of slack in their football schedule, but not a ton. And I know the Big Ten didn't build much at all, and they're going to end up in a pretty tricky situation here, at least in terms of crowning a proper champion if there's any more cancellations moving forward. The Ivy League, as has been said, was ahead of it in the spring. They did it in the fall, and you could say, okay, well, they canceled in the fall, but we're still doing football, and there were still some sports. Yeah, but the fall championships were canceled outside of football, of which the Ivy League does not have any influence over football.
Yeah.
So they were right. Like they led the way on both of these things. Right is the wrong term. You know what I mean? They were they blazed the trail in both the spring and the fall. So I don't take any Ivy League announcement lightly. I don't look at it in any way, shape, or form as just being a decision that happens in isolation. And we could see the same pattern play out, where it's smaller conferences and then bigger ones and then bigger ones, especially when it comes to indoor track, because that's what we know. We know how indoor track meets are conducted because we've been to a million indoor track meets, and it seems especially troubling. I keep going back to what you said before and what we agreed on, and Gordon agreed on this as well too, of cross country seems like the much more likely sport, the championship that's contested in that weekend in March. And I wonder now, I wonder if cross country is in jeopardy as well too, because if there is mass cancellations, I wonder if they're going to spend time splitting hairs and saying, well, but cross country is relatively low risk because it's outdoors and we can
Yeah.
socially distance. It might get caught up in one big swoop here, because I'm noticing
Yeah.
too from this Ivy League release, they also said, hey, they're not going to make up fall sports in the winter / early spring season. They're not going to do what other conferences might attempt to do or what the NCAA is doing. They're basically saying, that's it. We might do spring stuff, but they're not even going to start anything until the end of February at the
Mm-hmm.
latest. It makes
And
me think we might even see another reset and just be like, all right, truncated outdoor season. Truncated
yeah.
outdoor season might be the new standard with which we operate under.
Yeah, I didn't even initially when this hit, I guess there's just other priorities, but I didn't even associate it for what it meant for the March 15th NCAA cross country championships. But you're absolutely right, because this means there will be no Ivy League athletes at that meet if it even goes forward. And that's kind of, again, harkens back to what happened when Harvard pulled their athletes from indoors, and we thought back in March, and we thought, oh, wow, that was premature. And then hours later, the entire meet was canceled. Um, so if it follows that trend, this may just be the first domino to fall in that regard. And if you look at the numbers, I mean, 160,000 cases yesterday. I mean, the numbers are, as predicted in the fall, are going up, and it's hammering the middle of the country. It's hammering the north part of the country. And it does feel irresponsible probably to just proceed as if, I know there weren't going to be fans in the stands, or if there were, it was going to be limited, but it feels irresponsible because this is worse now than it was when we were we were doing no sports.
Yeah.
At least as far as the number. Now, our understanding of the disease, I think, is a little bit better. It's not a ton better, but it's a little bit better. But I think it's pretty clear it's not safe to do this stuff without taking extraordinary precautions like you would see in a professional sports league. I know that football has the motivation and the power to kind of get away with this, but they're testing people all the time, and I just don't think that every sport is going to have that same access. And again, with the changing of administration coming in January, I could see a lot of stuff changing. Everything is, as we've known, everything is tentative. I think there was this perception like, oh, football came back and there were some cross country meets and other fall sports got rescheduled to the spring, that we had kind of reached the finish line of sports being canceled or postponed. I don't think, I mean, not, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think changes are coming.
Do you get the feeling it's going to be like the spring, where once it happens, it's just an avalanche again of cancellations, and that there's going to be a bunch of dominoes that fall? Because it's weird, because you're right. You've had all these things added back. The Pac-12 came back for football. The Big Ten came back for football, and you're thinking, okay, well, stem the tide, and now we're putting events back on the calendar. We're not taking them off. But when I see this Ivy League decision, I think, okay, well, what's to stop the next conference, and then this meet's canceled, and that meet's canceled, and then we're right back to where we were just a couple months ago.
I understand that the NCAA is unique in this, and that they have student athletes who are on a clock and who are pursuing 4-year degrees. And so therefore you're having athletes that are going to have their entire, big portions of their career wrecked, and postponing again, pushing back championships does further damage to that. But I think if the numbers continue to rise and government officials start telling people we need to do lockdowns similar to what we were doing early in this process, it's going to fly in the face of the way the rest of the country is operating. So, maybe in the big sports, the NCAA can figure out the way to make it happen. So maybe they can have basketball and football. We'll see. Basketball, obviously indoors, much more complicated. But it's not getting easier. It's getting more difficult for these things to continue happening. And again, now that the Ivy League, who set the tone 2 other times, is out, I think it's a decent indication of the reality that we may not have the rescheduled fall championships, and winter sports will certainly look a lot different. Maybe we'll look more like the fall, where we had conference by conference going, we're not competing, or we are going to compete a smaller schedule. I think that's probably the best case scenario. Ivy League's not going to be alone on this. They're not going to be, just because they have the best institutions under their purview does not mean they're going to be the only conference that cancels winter sports.
Indoor track, if we're talking specifically about the sport that we covered, it's just a whole big complicated mess. I'm not even talking about the virus. I'm talking about on a regular year in terms of how do you qualify, how do you conduct meets, and when you add in this dynamic, who's flying all the way across the country to get in these races?
Shouldn't be allowed. It shouldn't be allowed. Yeah.
Well, I think most conferences. Yeah. I think even the most free market of conferences would have some restrictions on it. It's not like, hey, come to UW, then fly over here to Lubbock, and then go over there. Like even the institutions that are allowing people to compete have some precautions up that would make it difficult to do these massive invitational type meets with qualification purposes. So that dramatically changes what the NCAA indoor season looks like. In terms of the pro season, I have a hard time believing any pro athlete who they don't need any excuse on a normal year to skip indoors would just bow out. It would just bow out because of the risks involved. And are you going to travel all the way across the world to run in a world indoor championships in an Olympic year? No, not just because of COVID, but maybe you don't want to do that anyway. So you wait and you see, and then you find some safer competition opportunities. I think on the pro and the collegiate level, I think it's going to be dramatically different than previous years.
Agree. Yeah, the Nanjing World Indoor Championships were always kind of doomed in an Olympic year, and that's especially so. The first thing gets postponed, and now that's coming up awfully quick. If we're going to try to put that in March, I could see that getting canceled altogether. Who wants Americans coming over? I mean, I know you need to be tested before you could come over, but who wants Americans coming over to their country right now? I mean, we're in absolute disaster right now, and I wouldn't want to introduce other countries that have it under better control. I wouldn't want American athletes coming in right now and possibly infecting, starting another wave.
It's not just that. It's not just American athletes. It's like, who wants to put on an international event right now? I wouldn't even say
no one. It's not optically, it's terrible, right?
Well, optically and scientifically, it seemed terrible too, because it's just, this whole thing comes down to cost benefit. The NBA can pay $100 million to create a bubble that's safe and conduct their tournament. Major League Baseball can do it. But are the Nanjing World Indoor Championships really going to invest that much money? Are they going to sink that much more money into make?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So even if you put optics aside, it's just like logistics of having a safe event are extraordinarily difficult. You're going uphill already, and now you're just pelting someone with snowballs as they try to walk up this incline. It does not seem like it's going to be able to be rectified in the time that we have. Because you mentioned March, we're halfway through November now, so we're 3-4 months out from this stuff.
Yeah. And you have a outdoor meet coming up with a bunch of college athletes December 5th.
Pro athletes too.
I would, pros too. Not that signals the impossibility of an indoor season, but in normal circumstances, if you were preparing to run an indoor season, I don't think you would be out there ripping a 10K, but for some athletes, or a 5,000. Not that disqualifies you, like I said, but I think a lot of people are starting to proceed as if indoors is, at worst case, not going to happen, or at best case going to be, something you basically do at the teams that have indoor tracks. Maybe they'll run some time trials but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how you can justify going, having even scaled back meets. I don't know how that's going to be possible. I think we're going to start to see indoors, the opportunities slim way down to the point of which we're going to wonder, is it even reasonable to have an indoor championships,
Well,
because the opportunities to get marks is so difficult.
what's the benefit to it too? People treat
Right. It's just indoors.
indoors as a detour on a larger trip to the Olympic trials or the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, run that meet in LA. Get that 10K qualifier when you can. That makes a lot more sense than running a fast 3K somewhere indoors on an oversized track, or getting in a mile. Like, get your qualifying times. That's one thing we've been talking about for months here. It's just make it outdoors in the winter in these warm weather places, Florida and California. If you can do it safely, it makes sense from a calendar perspective, and it makes more. I'm not saying it makes sense from a health perspective, because I'm not an expert, but it certainly makes more sense from a health perspective than having an indoor meet. That I think everybody would agree on.
I definitely can concur.
Yeah. All right. AIU appeal. I don't have much to add to this. Just wanted to mention it. I don't know if they're going to call the gas canisters to the line, or to testify in this appeal. That would be interesting. Something tells me this is going to hinge on the idea of strict liability as it pertains to Salwa Eid Naser's phone number being incorrect, but I don't know how that's written in the rules. I know there is that idea that you are ultimately responsible for availing yourself to drug testing, but I don't know if phone number being inaccurate is part of that, because we know definitely they went to the wrong address. We have sworn deposition from numerous propane tanks that will state that.
My view of this is the AIU must feel like they have a really good chance to win this appeal in front of Kaz, because I don't think people operate under the idea that they only do things to prevent embarrassment, but this would be, I would think, substantially more embarrassing should the AIU lose this in front of Kaz. They're bringing this because it's kind of like, wow, you are out to get Salwa Eid Naser, and you can't win. Now, on the other side, it's, look how ridiculous this case is. Should the tribunal really have sided with the athlete here, when it almost seemed, I mean, there were so many things that she did not provide that did not help the DCO reach her, that some people could easily view as deliberately deceiving. I know they didn't rule on that, and you can't necessarily prove that, but when you put the wrong address, you don't have your phone number, you don't give instructions for how to access the apartment building. You've got a DCO who's experienced here knocking on a gas canister door, which we turned into a song yesterday or a couple days ago. It would seem like that is plenty enough for Kaz. Now, I don't know the letter of the law. I don't know if they'll operate on some precedent. I don't know exactly how they're going to rule. But the idea that an athlete could get by on that, I mean, that's why it surprised me that Christian Coleman got the 2-year ban, because it seemed like the same level of nuance that allowed her to skirt by the rules kind of could have been present in him. Now, of course, I didn't know then at the Christian Coleman case that he actually went to Walmart, which he lied to us about. I didn't realize that. But if this sets a precedent, this Naser case, that, you could essentially give the wrong apartment number and not provide your phone address and not give instructions for how to get into your building, well, then every athlete that's trying to be suspicious is going to do that. They're going to be like, oh yeah, sorry, I got the wrong address. I was off by a number, didn't list my phone number because I change it every 3 weeks, and also there's a complicated maze to get to my door, and I'm not going to explain to you how to do it. You got to figure it out. Okay, thanks. It's like, no. Like, it seems like a cut and dry case, right? That if logic prevails, that Kaz would say, this is ridiculous. However, if it's not listed in the AIU's rules that you have to have the correct phone number, that you that you have to give express instructions for how to actually access the building, and you have to give the right address. And if not, it's a rules violation. Then maybe Kaz will side on Salwa Eid Naser's argument here. But man, if there was ever one to be reversed in an appeal, this seems like it would be it.
I just think these things need to be spelled out a little bit more. Just with the Coleman case, there should either be a phone call rule or there should not be a phone call rule, and that's what they should be instructed to do moving forward. And there should be a accurate address rule, and there should be a
how hard is that?
There should be a transparent attempt here by both athlete and doping control officer about what's expected, and then if one of those things is broken, then they get the violation and you move forward. But it seems what happens is the person's not there, and then you reverse engineer a way to get them there, let them off of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, this has set a terrible precedent. It makes the AIU look bad. It makes Naser look bad with all the violations she accumulated, being able to compete ahead. Why was she able to compete? Well, because the investigation takes so long. Well, why does the investigation take so long? I mean, it's just something is broken in this process. And so AIU, this seems to be a grab for their credibility almost. And we shall see what Kaz does. Kaz has a mixed history of siding with the athlete or the institute, or on the side of the athlete. They do that almost just as much as they side with an institution or a governing body. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's no way to necessarily guess.
They have to follow WADA code. They have to follow WADA code too, right? They're not able to unilaterally make these decisions. They're just the intermediary here to enforce this stuff. So I don't want to make it seem like they can just out of whole cloth come up with this stuff. But when I talk about what changes I like to see, I'm referring to just a larger doping control effort as it pertains to how they interact with the athlete.
I'm sure they proclaim themselves as independent, but isn't it a bit of a conflict of interest to have a World Athletics tribunal decide a case when it would look bad if the tribunal would have sided with AIU and would have given Naser a ban, given the fact that she did have 3 violations ahead of the World Championships? Isn't that a conflict of interest? That would have made World Athletics look bad that they allowed her to compete at the World Championships if the tribunal would have come back and said, no, you're banned. You know. That felt like a conflict of interest to me. Maybe that's what they'll say. I don't know.
Yeah, you're thinking like a lawyer now.
Mm-hmm. That's my destiny, really.
Yes, you certainly, if you were Naser, or I guess if you were the AIU, you'd say that. But then it gets so complicated and twisted with the different bits of motivation here. Paul Chelimo running this weekend, making his much anticipated cross country. Well, I don't have anything else to add on that. Do you have anything else on that one?
Yeah,
I don't have anything else.
No, I'm good.
Making his much anticipated cross country debut or re-debut.
Yeah, coming back home to Terre Haute, the
8K. What's the 8K USA course record? I hope he just blasts this thing and makes the course record so far out of reach. It'd be amazing.
Could happen. Although Kennedy Kathuka had some quick times back in the day. Yeah, this is a interesting event, and Chelimo, who didn't really race, he didn't race outdoors at all. You got to be itching to get out there. I would have thought most athletes, after they leave in the NCAA, would have said, I've had enough of Terre Haute, Indiana. But apparently not for Paul Chelimo, Mason Furlick, some other athletes who starred in the NCAA in the past. They can't get enough. And I mean, good for Terre Haute. They don't. They
got a course.
When's the next time? Yeah, when's the next time they host NCAAs? It's a bit down the road here, and it's
D1 not for a while.
Yeah, I mean they've kind of lost their, they've got to feel like the NCAA, is like a breakup almost. We used to be so good. We used to have this relationship where we saw you 8 times in a 10-year span, and now it's like that's not the case anymore. So Terre Haute, of course, Laverne Gibson's missing some of these competitions.
We have Amanda Eccleston, who will be running. Amy Eloise Markovic representing. She runs for BTC, and then you have some Big Ten athletes that are running unattached, like Erica Vanderlyn, Bailey Hertenstein of Indiana, Kyle Mao will be there, Morgan Bealscomb. So they'll all be unattached, though, Olin Hacker, etc. So this is not for qualifying. So Gordon does not get to put this in his big master qualification document.
That is devastating. Yeah. So when is this? This is this weekend?
Yeah, this is Saturday, and I believe we got an email about this meet from Kevin, and I think he said he says the high school teams are competing Sunday, and the pros / unattached collegians are running on Saturday. So there you go.
Okay, looks like we got some Division 2 and maybe 3 runners as well. We'll also get to run.
Okay,
they haven't competed.
That piques your interest. That piques Lincoln's
there you
interest.
Go. Now I'm ready. Now I'm in.
Can I interest you in North Central?
Is that? Do I get a North? Oh no, that's Northwest. No, North
I don't
Central.
know. I'm just saying Division 3.
You almost got me really excited. Don't play with my emotions like that, Kevin. I can't.
What about you, Mary? Is you Mary in the building?
You would have thought, but no.
Colorado School of Mines?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, they're just up in the mountains. They're just getting ready, Kevin. They're just getting ready for whenever they need to come down and just dominate some Adams State, just perhaps getting set for some 8,000 feet dual meets where the waiting time is 27 minutes or something. I'll be interested to see what Chelimo can do, but it is also cross country, professional cross country in November.
It would have been funny
just getting out there for fun.
It would have been funny if Furlick didn't show up. So just the talent gap was just immense between Chelimo and everybody. Some of these college guys are pretty good, no doubt.
Oh yeah.
But you have one of the 5 best distance runners in the world just deciding to go play pickup basketball with some kids at the park.
Kind of like that. It's not unlike that.
It's been a lot of fun.
Looks like they're going to get some Terre Haute weather. I'm already looking. Anytime it's a Terre Haute meet, I automatically have the instinct to go check the weather. It is mid-November after all. 50 high of 51, low of 54 with some rain and 17-mile-an-hour winds. There you go. It's cross-country weather, baby.
So I did pre-nats last year, and my memory was I was really sick for it, but my memory was that the weather was quite
common
nice
for you. High-level meets you tend to get ill for. That's a standard for you.
Mid-level meet. I raised my game for the high-level meet because I was healthy for when I went back for NCAAs, but the weather was just completely awful for NCAAs. But for pre-nats, now it was way earlier. It was the only time I've ever been in Terre Haute when the weather was nice. Yeah, it just was. It made all the difference in the world. Although I did have a horrible hotel experience that I will not recap on this show.
You give him a review on Yelp?
I don't even remember where I stayed. Did I stay with? I remember I went to Alex's room at midnight because that's when I got in, and there was bugs in the room and on the bed. So I pieced out of there. So I think I ended up going. Oh yeah, Travis had a room with an extra bed. It was just unbelievably sketchy. And then
it's the Midwest, so the roaches are a little nicer in the Midwest than they are down the South here. So at least you can appreciate that.
They're Iowa nice. All right, we have an email I want to read. We just got it 7 minutes ago from Travis. Not that Travis, the other Travis. Huge fan of FloTrack. I love your content. Was watching the podcast where you spoke about Wade Van Niekerk, and I realized you were missing something. I will give you the link to the video where Wade ran the 445.89. If you watch the start of the video carefully, you will see that he completely broke his starting block, causing him to stumble. Here I am with no crowds at a very low-key event on a track that is 1,340 meters above sea level. Therefore, I feel like the 45.89 isn't a true reflection of the shape he's in. I'm sure when he runs an international event with proper competition, he will go a lot faster.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
know we
Travis, for
posted
writing
the
in.
link. We posted the clip of us talking about this where I was really shining as an all-star, putting my neck out there, suggesting that Van Niekerk is done, and it uh, got a little bit of criticism. I mean, people aren't clearly like me ready to give up on old Wade. I did hear that he
Oh, the
stumbled a
block did
little bit
slip.
out of the blocks, and I know there were some people, who highlighted that sometimes when Van Niekerk has been a little bit of a slow starter and has got things rolling. Some people saying, well, look at his 2016. I do want to dispute this. Look at his 2016 season. He started with 47 and a 46 and ended up running 43.03. I want to dispute that record a little bit. Those round and semifinals of the South African National Championship. So he's clearly jogging those. So it's not like he was starting in 2016 from 47-second fitness and then chopped down to 43.03. Listen, I have my opinion. Yeah, I mean, he may have stumbled a little bit. And I guess also to his side, he did have COVID. And, it's unclear how that's affecting him long term. So maybe he's, just starting to feel like himself. I just have doubts. I think even stumbling out of blocks, I mean, Michael Norman could do, could do a backflip out of the blocks and he'd still run faster right now than 45.89. Maybe Van Niekerk older, it's just going to take him a while. I do think we're going to see him back at the Olympics, but the thought that I think he's going to be himself is completely over. And and I'll support my claim that I say I think he's done. I don't think we're going to see any more medals out of Wade Van Niekerk. I just don't. I think he's too old. I think it's taken him too long to get back. I've seen enough in the last 3 years to think that this is not the same athlete, and he's not going to be super competitive on the world stage. I mean, he has some okay times, but he comes back in February this year before the pandemic and runs 47.4. Are you kidding me? He has not broken 45 seconds yet. He's not been particularly close.
You're doubling
No.
down, man. You're
Yeah,
doubling
I don't.
down here.
Just because people are
Listen,
angry at me, I mean, he's trying to come back. I'll give him credit, but I just don't see it.
yeah, listen. Here's what I think. Wade Van Niekerk, more so than any other athlete, has the greatest variation of what his Olympics next year will look like. It would not surprise me if he didn't make the final, but it also would not surprise me if he managed to get a medal, maybe even win gold if things break his
That
way.
would not. You're saying that would not surprise you? I mean, that would surprise me.
That would not surprise if he got back to where he was, and then we could say, well, why are we putting so much stock in these 45-second times when there was no fans and blocks were breaking? Once you got him a Diamond League season under his belt, if he opens up next year in 44, are you going to be surprised? Are you going to be stunned that a 43.03 guy runs 44 to open? Right. So he opens at 44. He gets down eventually into the 43s. I'm not saying he's going to break the world record again. It'd be amazing if he did. I'm not banking on that. But I'm saying it's not insane for a 3-time gold medalist and a world record holder to win another gold medal. But it's also not insane to think, based on what he's done, that he may not even make the final. And he, more than any other athlete, represents that vast continuum of possibilities. And we just don't know them because the reasons we talked about the other day, which is you have the COVID season, then you have the injury, smack dab, one kind of after the other. So it's hard to get any read on somebody who runs a couple times a year. That's all I'm saying. But am I worried for him? Of course, because it's going on 3 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think right now, I think people's perceptions would change. Let's put, not that it's possible, but let's put Michael Norman, Fred Kerley, Stephen Gardner in the field with him right now and see how much he's getting beat by and how big the margin is for those guys' baseline fitness to his. I don't care that he has, 8-9 months to go. I think you're seeing somebody who's older than those guys and who is way, way, way behind them. And I just have doubts that just simply because he was at a time the greatest in the world and has the world record, that he's going to be able to make it all the way back. I just think by now, 3 years on, we would have started to see clearer signs that he's going to be able to come back and be, someone who's going to be able to run 43 mid. I just seen no signs thus far. 2016 has been 2016, 2017, a long time ago now. So I just have my doubts. I'm not just trying to make viral clips. That's my belief. Have I been wrong before? Yes, I in fact am more wrong than I am right on these topics, but I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Would you say you're an avid sports fan?
Certainly. I actually have a pair of flip-flops right now. I wanted to get a nice pair, but my wife insisted we not spend too much money on flip-flops. I just have a pair of flip-flops that say sports on the top of the
Wait,
shoe. It's pretty
too
impressive.
much money on
Sports.
flip-flops. What does that mean? Too much
Well,
money
I
on
was going to get like
flip-flops.
I don't know. I was going to get like a $30 or $40 pair, like I don't know, a brand name pair, and
Yeah,
she's like,
what's wrong with
"No,
that?
I can get that." Well, it's just, cutting corners in little places we can. So we just got
All right.
a nice off brand that just say sports on them, and it reminds me of multiple fun times we've had naming the track governing body Earth Sports, and avid sports fan. And as I mentioned in the podcast yesterday, I was thinking of Rob Lowe when he was at the NFL game last year wearing just an NFL hat. It felt
Yeah.
appropriate.
I'm a
I'm
big
just a fan of
the
sports. Go teams.
All right. Well, if you have more opinions on this, FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to tell us what we got wrong. Lincoln in particular. You didn't do yourself any. I mean, if you're trying to avoid the take by naming it "Is Wade Van Niekerk Done?" I mean, that wouldn't have been my title because I don't think that's even what we were discussing. But you definitely invited a lot of criticism there, and they already don't like you in South Africa, correct? That's a known thing.
I forget what it. I'm not sure what I did otherwise.
You criticized one of their 100-meter per people, or maybe it was Clarence
Oh,
Munyai's
yeah.
19.7 that he never replicated, which was a strange time. Anyway.
Well, I mean, I just look at everybody everybody's like Anaso Jabba. I can't remember his last name. I mean, everybody's other than Nasser, or excuse me, other than Van Niekerk and Caster Semenya, it seems like everyone's a flash in the pan. So that's
Simbine is good. Simbine has been good for a while.
Simbine, yeah, that's who it was. Yeah, Simbine's good. Yeah, he's just good. Not.
Yeah, he makes finals. He got
fourth, I think, or something.
Yeah, I am not saying that Van Niekerk is 100% going to get back, but I've also been talked into the idea that it is a little early. There is still some time, and crazy things can happen, especially with someone with that level of talent. But right now,
no other sport but track and field could you be literally away from 3 years out from injury and been like, he's still coming. It's happening. He hasn't missed a whole lot. It's also like he's literally missed one big competition, the World Championship in Doha, which basically most of the world missed anyways because there was no one there. That's track and field for you, though. What has he missed? Oh, well, we had an off year in 2018 and world champs in the desert in 2019. And then we had a completely off year in 2020 because of the pandemic. I mean, if you want to side on him, he hasn't missed a ton.
Right. And that's what it makes it seem like he hasn't been gone that long when he has been gone for a while. But the 2018 season, there was no championship, and the 2020 season was cut short and had no Diamond Leagues really in it as well. All right, we'll leave it there. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. Gordon and I will be back on Monday. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Send us your emails. We would appreciate anything to talk about in these slow times. We'll recap Paul Chelimo in what I assume will be a triumph on the cross-country course in Terre Haute next week. Thank you to Alon for producing. Have a great weekend, everyone.